So in the Ziva technique and in what I teach in the book, we teach the 3 M's. So mindfulness, which is kind of like the runway. It's something active for you to do. And I use a technique called come to your senses, which is really simple but very powerful, where you're basically utilizing all 5 of your senses to bring yourself into the now. And I like it because it's active, and most of my high-performing clients say it's very challenging for them to go from running 90 miles an hour to just that goodbye, that deep healing rest that happens when they're meditating. So we use that mindfulness as like an appetizer. So I start by having people hear what they're hearing, the most prevalent and the most subtle, and then feel what you're feeling, see what you're seeing, taste what you're tasting, smell what you're smelling. And that does 2 things. One, when you use your 5 senses, it wakes up your right brain, which is in charge of the right now, and it gets people out of this idea of distractions. It's like, oh, I can hear the buzzing of the camera. Oh, I can hear the sirens outside. I can hear my dog barking. And instead of thinking, oh, I'm a bad meditator because I'm not deaf, it's like, no, meditation's not going to make you a deaf person. Your eardrums are still going to work just fine. You're actually going to have spidey senses. You start to include everything that's going on inside of the experience, which makes it much more enjoyable because, again, it's designed to be integrated into your life. And then we click into like the main course, which is the meditation. And in that, we're utilizing a tool called a mantra. And that word gets a little hijacked by the wellness industry. A lot of people use the term mantra to mean affirmation. You know, like, I'm a strong, angry woman, or I want $1 million. And those are what I would call affirmations. The word mantra is a Sanskrit word. Man means mind, and tra means vehicle. So the mantras that we're using in the book and in the online course and in person are to varying degrees of efficacy or strength, but all of them act as mind anchors. So they're designed to de-excite the nervous system. And when you de-excite something, you create order. When you create order in your body, that lifetime of accumulated stresses that we all have in our cellular memory can start to come up and out. And it is that purging, that catharsis of stress that's ultimately ushering us into a higher cognitive performance state.
So let's talk about the notion of like there's all this sort of retained stress. You talk about it being in the cellular memory. So the first thing I was like is all of our cells turn over every however many years. So what exactly is retained and how exactly does meditation as being different from mindfulness allow us to release that?
So just being a human being on the planet Earth right now, your cells are getting damaged, right? Like UV radiation from the sun, free radicals, microwaves, now the radiation of our cell phones, like all that is changing our DNA, our chromosomes, our cellular performance, our mitochondria. It's what's impacting us. And so when we go to sleep at night, it's almost like there's been a bunch of potholes in the road in our cells, and then we sleep, those potholes get filled in. It's like we repave the road each night when we sleep. And very similarly in meditation, because we're giving our body this deep healing rest, it's like it's just smoothing out the potholes in the road. We're letting everything heal in the way that nature designed. Like, I don't think that nature intended for us to be sick, tired, and stressed. I think that nature wants us to be happy and healthy and vibrant. But because our modern day lives are not really acting in accordance with nature, we're not in the sunshine as much as we should be. Our feet are not on the soil as much as it should be. We're not having as much sex as we should be. Our food is not really food anymore. And so we're doing a lot of things that are taking us out of alignment with nature. And so the meditation, I think, is becoming real, almost medicinal. And so we need this deep healing rest to sort of combat our modern day lives.
Okay, so going back to the sort of physical nature of what we're doing. So we're getting in a mindful state, it's bringing us into the present. What is happening to the body in those moments? Because it's pretty profound.
So in the breath practices, which I will use breath work almost as a warm-up, I'll do something called balancing breath to kind of prime the brain and body to surrender into the meditation. But when you're using breathing techniques, which are so powerful, there is always something to come back to, and it's a little bit more effort, and it requires a little bit more discipline. It's a bit of a shorter leash, which in this style of meditation is a much longer leash. I like to call it the lazy man's meditation, because it feels almost like taking a nap sitting up. You're not controlling your mind, you're not concentrating, you're not efforting. It's almost a surrendering practice, and we Westerners don't like that word surrender.
I will give you that. That was another thing, reading the book, I was like, In fact, tell people what's the difference between surrendering and giving up.
Well, giving up is like you're surrendering in defeat. I quit, I can't do it. Versus surrendering to me means surrendering at the feet, surrendering at the feet of nature. It's trusting that nature has more information than we do. It's trusting that maybe, just maybe, there are forces at play that are bigger than our left brain individuality. And I think when you start meditating, you tap into that right brain, which I liken the right brain to a Wi-Fi router, to where it's like the thing that allows you to plug into collective intelligence. It's the thing that allows you to download those creative ideas. And you've probably found this when you're meditating, you're just so much more creative, you're so much more in flow state, and that's happening because you're quite literally taking that right brain to the gym, and then you start firing on all cylinders in your waking state. But to go back to your original question about what's happening physiologically and like where and why is stress stored and for so long, you're right, the body does regenerate cellularly every 7 years, but if you have a trauma story or some narrative going on, this brain machine is the thing that's responsible for printing every single cell in the body. So if you haven't healed that trauma on a psychological level, then you might print the same cells in the body. So by the time the average American is 20 years old, we have approximately 10 million premature cognitive commitments, which is this background radiation that you're talking about. It's like these open windows on your brain machine. And most of us, to survive, have had to minimize those, right? So it's like they're all open, but they're minimized. But then when we start meditating, it's like we go in and we maximize those windows so that we can click X and get rid of them. So as far as the practice itself, it's very much about letting go. It's very much about letting go of control, surrendering, and there's not too much for you to do. And I know, and honestly, that's where my job becomes a job, because I live in New York. I teach busy New Yorkers. I teach, Oscar, Tony, Emmy, Grammy Award winners. I'm teaching high performing folks, and they don't want to let go. They don't want to surrender. They're like, I'm good, thanks. I'm gonna keep my illusion of control. And so honestly, my job becomes giving people the tools and enough intellectual knowledge that they trust the process and that they feel safe enough to let go.